So you also in the drift, you distinguish between operating by reaction and operating by rhythm. I know this is very important for you too, and I love this because I can be quite reactive. So this is important for me as well. But for a nonprofit leader who's, their whole identity is often wrapped up in being responsive to staff, to donors, to everybody else that, their board. What does that shift feel like at the beginning in the first, say, month?
Super uncomfortable. You're going to hate it. You're going to be like, why am I doing this? I don't like it. Icky, icky, icky. It's like if anybody's ever run, like tried to become a runner, done couch to 5K or whatever,
Yeah.
those first miles are
Oh,
atrocious,
horrible.
right? But then if you ever become a half marathoner or a longer distance runner, you're like, I just ran 5 miles. I'm good. It's all about that muscle. I also think the thing that happens when leaders start to do these things is you give permission to your team to do them. So
Hmm.
if you carve out the time, if you are slower on your reactions, if you give that space, then guess what? Your team's like, oh, I can do that too. I can slow down. I can be the best version of myself. And there's always a crisis. So, but unless you're literally working for like the Red Cross or doing crisis delivery, what do we always say? We're not, it's not rocket science. It's not this. It's incredibly important work, but like you get to decide how you want to show up, and which is a really big mental shift because
Yeah.
we're told like this is how a good nonprofit leader behaves. This is how a good development. These are the rules. Well, do the rules really work for you? Are they actually serving your organization and you? Those are really big questions that starting there is probably a better spot than like, what's the action step I have to take,
Yeah. So true too, or I can see the impact, and we all see the impact of it on our the turnover, employee turnover rate within nonprofits is because I mean, so often exit interviews say that it's just sheer exhaustion. They feel run down, underappreciated, and like have just been tasked with too much. So if we could make that shift from the leadership place, like the spokes on the wheel, you turn one and all the rest of them start turning two. I love that too. Um, so you've mentioned AI a couple times, and now you're going to tell us how you're going to leverage it. Because I've talked a lot, just being a technologist, being in tech and around nonprofits. There's a healthy dose of fear of
Mhm.
AI, and I mean, and there's plenty of headlines that support that fear, right? It's taking jobs, it's changing the world that we live in, it's going to reshape economies, and all of these things. So um, how do you approach that, and how do you talk about AI to people that might be very AI hesitant, to use a mild term?
And you are allowed. So first things first, like everybody has permission to attack this
Yeah.
new thing however how they want to. So I think the first is if you're not comfortable, it's okay. Because a lot of other people aren't comfortable. I was just talking to a friend who had been at Icon and she was saying there was so much about AI, but no one was actually showing anybody like, what do I actually do? Like give me a
Tell me
thing
the
to
steps.
do, right? Go in and do it. And so here's the framing that I'm going to give you. And Dan Kershaw, he's a CEO out of Canada. He runs something called the Furniture Bank. He has a Substack. Follow him. The other person to keep an eye on is Tim Lockey, who runs the Human Stack. Those two folks are really talking about the human components of it and giving really cool practical examples. So if you're curious, there are two people to go check out. And Dan actually, his writing actually helped my thinking. So I learned a lot in reading his stuff. He talks about treating AI as your minions.